parlando di, avete visto come anche il premio vincitore e anche altre cose mostravano come uno spazio vuoto apparentemente senza significato può diventare qualcosa di prezioso e di unico semplicemente ribaltando il punto di vista. E questo è il grande potere che ha l'architettura, aprire una porta, una finestra dove nessuno se l'aspetterebbe e svelare qualcosa di assolutamente inaspettato. Di questo credo che ci parlerà anche Antonia Faust dell'RIBA di Londra, Royal Institute of British Architects, parlando di questo concorso intitolato Forgotten Spaces, che parla appunto di come ripensare città partendo appunto dai luoghi dimenticati della città. Quindi Antonia.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. So my name is Antonia Faust, and I'm the Projects and Events Manager for the Royal Institute of British Architects, London region. RIBA London promotes award-winning architecture in the capital. We respond to cultural and community requirements, equip our 12,400 members with the right skills and influence to help deliver exceptional design and ensure that RIBA London is part of the decision-making and policy formulation process for the city. Working with members and regional branches through the RIBA London Council, the RIBA London team delivers a wide range of programmes that respond to contemporary issues, foster professional networks and informs future RIBA policies. I'm here today, as you heard, to talk about the Forgotten Spaces competition, which I managed from concept through to delivery. So Forgotten Spaces basically came about, I mean, have you ever sort of walked along the street where you live or on the way to work and sort of seen a neglected site, an area that's sort of left there, and just kind of thought, well, if only there was some funding, I could really do something amazing here. And I think that's something that lots of designers have experienced. I know I certainly have. And so Forgotten Spaces was conceived as a way to investigate and map neglected areas of London, while also providing a means for architects and designers to propose ideas and designs to inhabit overlooked and forgotten spaces. So as a membership organisation, we were also keen to promote the added value and demonstrate the breadth of approaches that architects can contribute to urban design. In the run-up to the Olympics, the focus on providing world-class public spaces and engaging members of the public in outdoor activities has increased noticeably. Landmark spaces are readily noticed and maintained, but ordinary spaces are also part of our everyday lives. We launched the competition in January this year with the strong support of our partners Design for London, who are part of our Greater London Authority, head up by our mayor, and developer and investor Qatari DR. The competition was open to architects, artists, designers and creatives living and working in Greater London. Entrants were asked to choose a site local to their work or home and had to present a thorough investigation of their chosen location along with their proposal. Substantial cash prizes of £5,000, £2,000 and £1,000 were an incentive for people to enter the competition, along with a chance to be included in a public exhibition of Forgotten Spaces on London's south bank of the Thames. So this kind of shows that a forgotten space could be large or small. It could be a grassy verge, a wasteland, an unused car park, a derelict building, an underpass or a flyover. The only requirement was there was no current development proposal logged in the local planning council. So the entrants did have to investigate with their local planning department to see if there were any plans for that specific site. So the competition was about regeneration via a grassroots approach. It allowed the architects and artists who care about their quarter of the city to come up with solutions for individual sites using sustainable and viable means as an alternative to the top-down model. We wanted to help competitors gain further insights to the competition and encourage people to consider specific areas of London. So we worked with the Space Makers Agency to devise a series of mapping events in Brixton, Hackney and Walthamstow. The Space Makers Agency have experience acting as mediators to help facilitate consultations between residents and communities and the local authorities and landowners. Participants, as you can see here, this was in Brixton. We held one of the sessions in Brixton Market, which in sort of recent years has declined. And the Space Makers Agency did a project which allowed, they took over the leases of, I think it was 60 units in the market. And they basically put out a competition and invited proposals to take over these units, and they had the winners got a 3-month free lease to take over the unit, and they had, I think it was again 300 entries, and there were 60, and they had a range of things from pop-up restaurants to temporary theatres. So again, Space Makers are really good people to start facilitating these conversations. So the workshops are brought these groups of people together, many of them strangers, sometimes not always architects, there could be local residents, a mixture of people. And so the attendees were asked to work in small groups and investigate forgotten spaces around the location of where we held the event. So in this case, it was a sort of 20-minute walk radius from Brixton Market. And so they went out, they had maps with them, they went and found these sites, they documented them through photography, sketching and making notes, and then they came back to the unit here in Brixton or in Walthamstow or Hackney. And then they would sort of brainstorm ideas and sketch out and then present back to the rest of the group. And so we had some really fantastic proposals in such a short time, or ideas. And so an example of this would be a giant chandelier that would hang from the underside of a brick arch in Brixton. It's a very dark and sort of desolate road, and this giant chandelier it remembers the history of the area. It's actually on Electric Lane, and Electric Lane was one of the first streets in, I understand, certainly in London, if not the whole of the UK, to receive electric street lighting. So as well as kind of creating a thing of interest and illuminating what is quite a dark space, it also connects with the history, which is something I know was touched upon earlier about connecting with the history. So then we also had a series of municipal-looking signs in Walthamstow. So rather than prohibiting certain behaviours, they say, do play ball games here, or, you know, do walk your dog here, do walk on the grass, rather than putting forward something negative. And then one of my favourites, which was a giant a giant-scale domestic dining room table on a street corner. So this would encourage, through its sort of domestic style, something that's familiar to everyone in their houses. It would invite people together and create, rather than something very harsh, something, you know, something that would encourage people to come, meet, eat their food, and then perhaps, you know, converse. So that was the mapping events. Going back then, so this then introduced the ideas of the competition, and then the actual competition itself. We were quite strict with the way that people had to enter, because we felt it was important to give very strict guidelines so that the material could be judged fairly. So the entrants had to submit 2 A1 boards following this strict criteria. We provided this template into which the entrants had to insert their work. So one board concentrated on the existing site and investigated the local community. This kind of slide shows the grey area. I mean, you know, you could put as many images in as you want, and then there was text that sort of investigated local communities and set up then the kind of argument for the proposal, which was the second board. So then the proposal was outlines the actual project and what they were putting forward and how it responded to those needs. And that was really asked for in a mixture of photo montage, some architectural drawing, but they really had to use a language, both visual and written, that would be accessible to all members of the public, because this would then form the basis of a public exhibition later on. And I know sometimes, architects can be so specific and use very, technical drawing, which perhaps sometimes members of the public can't access as easily. So, wonderfully, we received a staggering 150 entries, which was quite a challenge in terms of logging and reading all of the material. The entries covered a wide range of paces and typologies. Many of the entrants proposed the creation or development of urban gardens. This included two main typologies: community allotments for residents to grow their own fruit and vegetables, and also the creation of new natural habitats to promote wildlife in the city. So here is a space that you might recognise. It's the old Waterloo Eurostar terminal, which is now sitting empty. And this one proposes a kind of large covered garden. We also received a great number of schemes which advocate the provision of spaces for physical and sporting activities, responding to our fast approaching Olympic Games in 2012. The number of proposals for improved and elevated cycling lanes and for velodromes reflect the increasing number of Londoners choosing two wheels over four. And I notice here in Palmer there's quite a few people on two wheels. Other schemes were more thought-provoking. In response to the inevitable rise in the number of corpses generated in London, a result of our increasing population, we received a proposal for a new burial site in the heart of London's Earl's Court. This seemingly macabre proposal actually tackles a very real need in the local community. We are just simply running out of space, and we don't have anywhere to bury our dead. What I find interesting is the common thread running throughout many of these... Oh, sorry, that was the Grow Your Own. So this is... just carrying on with the presentation slides. This is one of the examples of the Grow Your Own stacked, because obviously we don't have huge amounts of space, kind of tiered allotment gardens. Again, responding to the Olympics. This one is kind of allowing for more leisure space. Using a bit of unused tube track for a conveyor belt marathon tunnel. The cycling lane going over the a disused railway. This is the burial ground. So what I find interesting is the common thread running through many of these forgotten sites. Neglected and poorly populated spaces seem to come about where a space has become separated from the surrounding area with just one or even no function. The 1960s saw a big increase in infrastructural projects, with superhighways and railways slashing through the city. In locations where traffic takes precedent over pedestrian links, social and commercial activity seems to shrink away. For example, in the central reservation of Park Lane, which was originally part of Hyde Park, it's now cut off on all sides by a busy three-lane road. This is a prime location in the heart of the city, yet remains completely unpopulated by people or activity. One competition entry tackled this by suggesting a mixed-use recreation park comprising a wedding chapel, sightseeing tower, a jogging centre, performance space, bars and restaurants. This will be shown later on in the presentation. An example of this in reality, where a mixture of traffic and social activity has been successful, is in West London under the A40, known as the Westway. This section of elevated road is now home to a hive of social, leisure, art, business and commercial activities. Rather than creating a dark corridor, the flyover now creates a canopy under which a huge range of activities take place. There is a fantastic climbing wall, stables and riding school, 2 sports centres, the famous Portobello Market, a skate park, music studios, and there's currently a proposal to build a semi-open-air cinema. Good luck with the British weather. The road carves a line through this part of London, but rather than dividing communities, in many places it stitches it together. The secret to its success is the allowance for pedestrian access, provision of amenities for local community, and the multi-layer programme. These qualities are mostly reflected in the 20 shortlisted schemes that were featured in the Forgotten Spaces public exhibition at the National Theatre on the South Bank. If we can, I don't know if we're going to have time, but if you can try and remember over these next few slides which one was your favourite, perhaps just note it down. We might do a show of hands later and kind of gauge which one we think was the most successful or interesting. Starting here, we have, this was actually commended. It's a new productive landscape, and it's for micro-allotments. So in London, it's a huge craze at the moment. It's growing all the time. People seem to want to grow their own vegetables, or certainly have a little patch of green somewhere that they can go, perhaps go away and get a bit of peace and quiet and dig up things and grow things. So these micro-allotment gardens are sited on a bit of raised, next to a railway line in Camden. So they bring splashes of green into this. It's quite a sort of dull and desolate area, and so the splashes of green will be visible from the surrounding buildings, but also for people on the train, and it also provides a viewing platform down onto the streets below. This is called Hanging Gardens of the Circle Line, and it's a suspended kind of garden stretch on 7 defunct ventilation shafts along the length of the Circle Line. The gardens benefit from the heat which comes up from the tube trains, which then will facilitate the growth of more tropical plants. So really bringing, again, bursts of colour into the urban fabric. Then we have the Kingsway Hub, which is in the site of a disused tramway tunnel. So it's a great big slope that goes down into subterranean. And it's a walk-through market connecting Holborn Station and the surrounding institutions on the site. Nearby is the Sir John Soane Museum, the UCL, and various other attractions, and the pedestrian the pedestrian quality above ground is fairly poor, with very, very busy traffic junctions. The next one is the nose to tail. And the nose to tail reflects the fact that this is, shows the process of basically eating meat from rearing the cattle right through to how it ends up on your plate. So there is a abattoir, a tannery, a butchery, kitchen and leather workshop all on site, and all of them have these window panels going in so that walkers by, diners, etc., can actually see the whole process. Then we have... Oh, that's gone in the wrong place. Okay. Park Lane is the one I was talking about earlier, originally part of Hyde Park, now cut off. And this provides a series of activities there, as I said, for the wedding chapel, a performance space, and improved pedestrian connections to the strip. Then this one is Walk the Line, which is a light installation on the underside of the M4 motorway. Basically, it's a series of reclaimed mirrors, so collecting old junk mirrors and pasting them onto the quite brutal concrete columns of this motorway. And then, so during the day, light would be reflected and bounced around, creating intrigue. And then at night, one single laser points onto one of the mirrors, and obviously the way that the angles of the mirrors have been would be designed that it then bounces all the way along, creating this lighting installation. Now, I hope that no one would be able to climb up there because I'm fairly sure their eyes might get a little bit hurt. So that's the commended shortlist. So those were 6 that got high commendations. So then the third place was Thames Archipelago by Craft Peg Limited. We also did actually have some... If I go back to the other slides, I can show you some of the... One jumped. There we go. So this is the remainder of the shortlist that didn't get commendations, but were included in the exhibition. So Beckton Alp, which is the top left one that you can see, the comically named Alp is, in fact, a mound that results as the piled-up waste of an old gasworks. And this scheme by Muff Architects stabilises the mound to create an accessible wilderness and a viewing platform to look over London. As you can see that from perhaps that slide, there are some fantastic views from there. Between and Nowhere, which is the second top left, is, again, I spoke about earlier, creating this waiting room gardens at Waterloo Station, the old Eurostar terminal. Crossbones Memorial, sorry, we've already had that one. Then there was the Fry and Barnet Sewage Works, which is the second one down, and this shows a community allotment garden which used the existing car wrecks as ornamental follies and greenhouses. Then the second middle one along is the Millwall floating gardens, and this creates a natural ecosystem for Millwall Docks, which is sort of financial district, which at the moment is quite harsh and doesn't really have any planting at all. And I think that image is fantastic to show what it could be like. Then there was the Old Kent Paradise, another landscaping scene, which is on the bottom left-hand corner. This is actually sited on a roundabout, and as we talked about earlier, with roads cutting off circulation, and this has increased connections to the site and remembers the old rural past of its site on the old Kent Road. Then there was the Performance of Forgotten Space, which creates a performance space resulting from the leftover spaces in the kind of back spaces of a high street, of the high street. So the back alleys then become important spaces. Visions of Utopia were the revival of an old orangery at Clapham with productive gardens and a cafe. And then Voicebox, which was the provision of a speakers forum in Brixton. So going back to third place. So third place was a series of eco floating platforms, as you can see on the lower right-hand side. These floating platforms provide a basis for a natural ecosystem, and each platform could facilitate the growth of slightly different ecosystems, and they would work both above the platform and below, so propagating sort of and encouraging fish underneath and then the different types of plants above. And there would be a provision of a canoeing school that would allow visitors to come and actually get in between those, the pads. The second prize, the pool, this is on the same site as the Kingsway Hub, which was the walk-through market, the tram line that goes down. As you can see the proposal, I think, is very evocative and has been extremely popular, but how feasible it is, I'm not entirely sure. And this is the first prize, which is the development of some existing reservoirs, man-made reservoirs. And it's in a particularly bleak site in sort of on the Black Horse Road, which is sort of in between Canary Wharf. You can see Canary Wharf just sort of to one side and then going out towards the Olympic Park. And at the moment, quite a rundown and neglected area. It used to have quite a lot of industry, sort of warehouses and there, but it seems to have died away, and this could potentially become a bit of a sort of low-key attraction, both providing education resources for local school children, but also trying to encourage day trippers to come to the area. It has in it fantastic, the reservoirs attract a fantastic collection of birds and wildlife already, so maximising on that. The judges were particularly really happy with this entry because it considered the really sort of quite humble enhancements. It wasn't big architecture. It wasn't the big, impressive sort of news headline superstar architecture. It was very sensitive, and so they really applauded that approach. And so now, if you would like to perhaps maybe do a raise of hands, starting with this, and please don't be affected by the comment that what the judges felt. I'd be very interested to see which ones you felt were the best or the most interesting or thought-provoking. So just starting with this one and going backwards, who felt that the reservoir roofs was their most favourite? Show of hands, please. One. Okay. Not that many. And the pool. Okay, I'm not going to count, I'm just going to give a rough indication. The floating natural habitats.
Well, okay. Playing together.
Okay, and walk the line, the lighting installation. One. Okay. Oh. The park lane. Nope.
Too complex.
Nose to tail. No one wants to see a cow slaughter before you eat it? Oh, can I just... Okay.
But they're used to hear.
Kingsway Hub. No. And the Hanging Gardens. Okay. And then the new productive landscape. Oh, I've got to go.
So
okay, well...
The pool and
the pool
garden.
Yeah, I think it's those two.
Those two, yeah.
Okay. Mine was nose to tail. Okay, well, thank you very much for your participation there. So, our outcomes. First of all, we had the public exhibition, and as I said, those schemes that we just talked about were showcased in an exhibition, and the National Theatre they call it London's living room. It's a phenomenal building by Dennis Lasden. It actually was one of our first ever RIBA award-winning schemes, and if you see the way that it's used throughout the day, it opens at like 10 o'clock, 9:30 in the morning, and is open through till 11 o'clock at night, and a lot of the visitors are not there to see theatre. They come in with their laptops, they have mobile offices, they sit in there, they hold their meetings there. It's just the most peaceful and lovely atmosphere and fantastic architecture, and they host exhibitions. There is jazz in there, played sort of at least 3 times a day. I mean, it's just a fantastic atmosphere. And so having the exhibition here was fantastic because it meant that we could engage with a slightly different audience rather than holding it at the RIBA or perhaps the GLA, the Mayor's Council Chambers. This was kind of really attracting a different audience. And again, that's why we were really keen to use a language that would encourage people to look at the work, because I know that sometimes with architecture exhibitions we can put up just the plain boards, and a lot of people don't want to engage with it, and so we employed some exhibition designers to come up with a way of presenting that created an exhibition that itself would be something that would attract attention and encourage people to then go closer and look at the work. And this idea of kind of that created this ghostly idea. These model plinths are exactly modelled on the concrete waffle slabs above, so it looks like they've dropped down, and the work pushes through the wall in extrusion. And so collectively, the actual exhibition did actually help people to really come and look at the work, and it's been really well received, which is fantastic. So this is the exhibition, and I was talking about the extrusions coming through the walls. We also asked for all of the entrants, once that we'd shortlisted them, we gave them the opportunity to make models, because again, models are a really quick and engaging way to understand a project, the ideas. This one is the pool, which I know is very popular in this room, in the bottom left-hand corner. So getting back to the outcomes. Forgotten Spaces was conceived as a way to provoke discussions and inspire new partnerships between designers and landowners, local authorities and government agencies and developers. The competition caught the attention of Transform, and Transform is one of the project teams for the London Organising Committee of the Olympic Games, otherwise known as LOCOG. Transform enables community groups to propose, develop and be supported in executing lasting improvements to poor, derelict, orphan and underused local sites. This support includes volunteers, assistance and fundraising from existing sources of funding and possible paid professional help. We invited Transform to assess the entries for Forgotten Spaces. This was during the actual judging process, so we invited them alongside in tandem to come and look at the entries. And we discussed with them the potential of turning one of these Forgotten Spaces entries from a conceptual to an actual built proposal, and we kept this under wraps until the opening night of the exhibition. So as a result, Transform are now in discussions with Artillery Architects to investigate the feasibility of building the plinth proposal, which was a sculpture park on the top of a railway viaduct. And so this is their scheme. It was in the shortlist, it wasn't one of our commended ones, but the Transform team felt that this was particularly interesting for them because it's on the access to one of the entry points of the Olympic site and in one of their host boroughs. There are 5 host boroughs for the Olympic Games, and it answers their needs, which is really looking at creating public space, improved public spaces. It's a relatively small scale and could then be taken forward once it actually had been built, could be looked after by local community groups, which was another thing that they're very interested in, is empowering local people and putting the onus back onto to local people to take ownership of spaces rather than having, the municipal teams always upgrading and looking after spaces. So we're really pleased that Forgotten Spaces really seems to have captured people's imagination, and I'm delighted at how far the story has travelled. Last week I received an email from a journalist in Korea who wanted to write about the competition and exhibition, and one of the shortlisted architects, Martin Ebert, he designed the Oghead Paradise, which was a landscaping scheme on the roundabout. He's been invited to speak about his proposal and the competition in a conference in Copenhagen this month. And of course, I'm delighted to be here talking to you all today. We plan to continue to develop this model, which gives local people a voice to express their hopes and desires for their local spaces. It is hoped that this will be a beneficial exercise for all involved, for the local authorities, for designers and planners, and most importantly, for the end users. So if you're interested in viewing any of these schemes in any further detail, you're most welcome to look at our website, which is www.architecture.com/RIBA London. I will also be leaving a couple of copies of the brochure which we produced in collaboration with the Architects Journal magazine, which again profiles all of the shortlisted entries and lists all 150 entries as well. I'm afraid I didn't quite have enough room in my luggage to bring 200 of them, but I do have a couple if you'd like to look at them during the break. Thank you very much.
Grazie moltissimo Antonia Faust e soprattutto per averci portato questa esperienza che dimostra alcune cose che aggiungono altri elementi alla comprensione nostra di come stanno cambiando gli spazi pubblici. Due temi diciamo di fondo importantissimi. Il primo che piuttosto che continuare a consumare territorio nuovo, nuovo spazio, la cosa più importante che possiamo fare oggi nei prossimi decenni è quello di ripensare creativamente, attivamente quello che abbiamo. Solo il cambiamento del punto di vista sulle cose che abbiamo sotto il naso tutte le mattine può aiutarci a ripensare radicalmente gli spazi pubblici. L'altro è quello che un concorso pubblico aiuti la gente come dire, la cosiddetta gente normale, la gente che vive tutti i giorni in questi spazi, ad ascoltare la città. Questa è un'altra cosa importantissima. L'architettura ha continuamente a che fare con i desideri della gente, no? L'architetto rielabora, reinterpreta i desideri del committente, ma contemporaneamente si rapporta continuamente con quella che è la richiesta di spazio, di qualità nei luoghi pubblici, e stimolare la gente a capire quello che ha davanti, addirittura a produrre visioni, vuol dire come dire, accorciare la distanza tra la vita di tutti i giorni e le decisioni. Troppo spesso si percepiscono i progetti di architettura come qualcosa calato dall'alto, e invece come dire, la capacità di costruire dialogo, di costruire ascolto e di produrre anche una forma diversa di sperimentazione sullo spazio pubblico credo che sia fondamentale. Un altro elemento importantissimo, avete notato quanto sia tornato inevitabilmente nelle riflessioni, nelle proposte di chi ha mandato questi progetti, il tema della natura. Sembra banale e scontato, ma non è solamente più un problema di avere più giardini, di nuove piazze, nuovi alberi, ma proprio addirittura di ripensare radicalmente il rapporto proprio con l'idea di natura stessa, cioè proprio torneremo sempre di più a parlare di agricoltura nelle città, di spazi produttivi agricoli dentro le città, magari questa cosa in una città come dire, di media grandezza, come Parma, come tutta diciamo, la linea diciamo, della via Emilia che tutti ben conosciamo. Io sono originario di Lodi, quindi come dire, è una realtà che conosco benissimo, però sempre di più nelle grandi aree metropolitane. Tenete conto che più del 65% della popolazione mondiale vivrà in grandi aree metropolitane, quindi il tema dell'agricoltura come spazio produttivo di nuova generazione dentro la città tornerà a essere un grandissimo tema di progettazione, molto interessante, molto sofisticato e totalmente da esplorare. Lo spazio pubblico oggi è un grande laboratorio a cielo aperto di sperimentazione, non è più solamente il tema della ripavimentazione, ma è proprio il tema di ripensare radicalmente cosa vorrà dire vivere le nostre città nei prossimi decenni. Questa è una sfida straordinaria per l'architettura e per le municipalità che sapranno interpretare in anticipo questi temi.